Welcome to the Tara Palmeri Show and the Red Letter. We've got Ross Barkan on the line. And Ross, I had him on the show the day before the election, the primary election. We saw each other at a Substack party, and Ross was pretty clear with me. He's like, you're going to see a really big win. Mamdani's going to crush it. And I thought that was really interesting because at the time, Cuomo had all this money. He had the institutions behind him, real estate, donors. And I mean, you saw Zoran start to surge in the polls, but you were so confident that this was going to be a massive upset. I was really impressed, and I've been following your reporting ever since. Obviously, Ross and I go way back. Some of you may not know this about me and my long journey as a journalist. I was a City Hall reporter for about a year at the New York Post, which you wrote about today, and we'll talk about that. It's a very influential newspaper, an angry tabloid, but it has a lot of heft, and you can make a mistake by crossing the New York Post, as you wrote about, and what de Blasio did actually during the time when I was reporting for them. And it's just, this is a really kind of whirlwind moment because it's not so much the fact that we're almost certain that Zoran Mamdani is going to win. It's a question of how much does he win by? Is it over 50%? What does his mandate look like? And then what are the ripple effects around the country, the Democratic Party? How do they handle him? So Ross, what are you feeling right now? Yeah. What are you thinking? What is the energy you're getting from the campaign? What are they looking out for?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm, like many people, pretty confident Zoran Mamdani is going to win and be the next mayor. I guess the last question is, there's one poll from Atlas Intel. They're highly pollster. They've showed a very close race, but they're also the outlier. Most polls show 10 to 15 points. They've shown around 4. I thought Nate Silver actually did a good piece this afternoon about the race and how the problem for Cuomo is he's just not very popular. He's very high negative. So it's even if Mamdani starts to slip, which is very possible, there's been a lot of negative ads against him. He has weaknesses as being a 34-year-old Democratic socialist. Cuomo, his negatives are just so much higher than you'd see out of a typical mayoral candidate. He's so well defined. It's very hard to see what his winning coalition looks like. And turnout is very high right now. Turnout might be the highest could be 60 years in New York City for a mayoral race. So very big, right? And so Cuomo's people think, talking to them yesterday, they think that's good for them. They're convinced the big electorate, you're going to have shy Cuomo voters and people coming out against Mamdani. I am not convinced by that at all. I think Nate Silver, I think Silver made a good point today that the enthusiasm is so much with the Mamdani side over the Cuomo side. It is night and day where you can go to polling places, just talk to people. People are very excited to vote for Zoran.
Yes.
Voters, it's more we don't like Zoran, we don't trust him, or he's not experienced, or he's too left wing. I guess we'll vote for Cuomo or for Sliwa, the Republican. But there's a huge enthusiasm gap here. So just the race today, it's certainly Zoran's to lose. The 50% question is a big one. I tend to think he will break 50, but it's important for him to do it. If he's under 50, when you're asking about what comes next, I do think step one is if he wins it with a plurality, but not a majority, there will be questions about, the mandate, sort of his political capital, these kind of invisible things that do weigh on politicians. So I think for him, getting over 50 is something that is important in this race. It's not everything. If a win's a win, but it would mean a lot to him because there's a narrative out there, really being pushed by the Cuomo side that Sliwa is siphoning votes. He's a spoiler. Of course, he's the Republican. Cuomo's the independent.
Cuomo just got an endorsement from Trump.
Right. Donald Trump saying very, very unequivocally he prefers Cuomo in this race.
Yeah.
And Cuomo is actively courting Republicans, and that's
right.
That's sort of his last gambit, is to bring in Republicans and sort of try to have a broad coalition of moderate Dems, Republicans, Independents. I don't think it'll be broad enough. especially just with the enthusiasm on the Mamdani side and just the sheer number of people who are showing up. A lot of them are going to be coming out from Mamdani stronghold. So I expect him to win. And yeah, I think if he wins by a lot, right? If he comes into the mandate, he gets over 50. That's where the implications will be great for great in terms of like important for the National Party, for the Democratic establishment. You know, they can't hide from him. I mean, you can say it's New York City, it's not America, and that is true. But I think it's important to look at New York the way you look at Virginia, for example, because New York City basically has the population of Virginia. It's about
8 million.
Yeah, it's like almost the same. So it's like, yes, New York is very Democratic compared to America. It was a 70-30 or 68, about 68-30 for Kamala. But then you could say that about Democratic states as well. So, you know, if a socialist won a big state that leans left, you'd say that's a very big deal. So I think there are real implications in this race. And it is something, you know, some of the Democratic Party have embraced him. I mean, not just progressives, but you've seen some moderates like Alyssa Slotkin. She comes immediately. A few have said, you know, he spoke about affordability. He's a good messenger. We can learn something from him. And you have those who've just shunned him totally, who've either criticized him or like Chuck Schumer, I think taking the true coward's way out and basically saying nothing. I think if you want to be a moderate and say, not the Democratic Party, we don't want this, I think that's in your right to do it. Obviously, if you want to embrace Zohran Mamdani, that's your right to do it. But I do find the Schumer stance rather exasperating. And I think most Democrats feel that way. I mean, there's a reason that the base of the Democratic Party right now dislikes its leaders. And that's the first time, I'm sure the same with you, or I don't recall a Senate minority leader and a House minority leader being so disliked within the Democratic Party. You know, Pelosi was always well liked. Harry Reid was well liked. I mean, there's like they if you polled like the Democrats, like the voters today, if somehow they could choose their leaders, which they can't, I think Jeffries and Schumer would be thrown out. I don't think they have any kind of national vote, and that is different than what we used to see. So I think Zohran Mamdani, in a way, he's a part of that. I mean, there's a lot of people who are voting in New York who are progressive and leftist and even socialists who like what he's saying. But there's also a faction of people, which I think this is something Republicans miss, or some miss, not all, that there are parallels with Trump, where there was a Republican electorate in 2016 that was very dissatisfied with the leaders of their party, and they chose a fighter, they chose a disruptor, and that's what he did. Mamdani, like Trump in that election, is beating the Democratic establishment. Now, Trump remade the Republican establishment as the president. I don't know if Zohran Mamdani as a mayor can do that. That's a much bigger question, and I don't hesitate to predict that at all. I think the Democratic establishment is very broad and sprawling, and one mayor can't do that. But you know, there is something to it. I mean, it is if he wins and wins by a lot, it is a realignment election. It is a new era. It's a new era in New York City politics, certainly. And I think there are, you know, you can look at a race where it's going to be, gosh, when they count votes, I don't know, 2 million plus people are going to vote in this general election.
That's a big turnout for an off year.
It's when AOC won, you know, the talking point was, which was fair, that it was one congressional race in New York City against Joe Crowley, who lived in Virginia, didn't campaign. And it was maybe 40,000 people voted in that race, perhaps. I'm not even sure. And yeah, you could knock it and say, listen, why is she the spokesperson for anything when she won a House race, right? It's like, all right, well, Zohran Mamdani, if he wins today, will have won 2 like high turnout elections in America's biggest city. You can't hand wave it away, as much as I think there's like a faction of Democrats that want to do that. You can't. And for Republicans, I mean, they're going to want to make him the foil and the boogeyman. We all know that. But that's also an old story. I mean, Nancy Pelosi's been being put into attack ads, you know, for 20 years. So in one hand, yes, Mamdani could be a drag on moderates in swing districts. At the same time, I'm not convinced that voters in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin are going to be motivated all that much by like a negative Zoran ad. But we'll see. See what happens.
Yeah, and it's interesting because his messaging is just so similar to Trump's messaging. He rode in on the same wave of affordability. The New York Times reported that he was advised to focus on security in the city, and he chose instead to ride in on affordability, and it was a really salient issue. And I think it's something that, as much as Republicans see him as a boogeyman, they should be concerned about a candidate who is doing so well with a populist affordability message, because it's a sign that their promises are, falling short in a time when we have high cost of living, inflation at all-time highs. Every thing President Trump promised that the price of groceries would go down, and here we are. I do want to remind everyone that tonight Ross and I will both be at the election night party for Zoran Mamdani. I will be there with the Associated Press. I'll be commentating with their team on the ground at the Zoran Mamdani party. It'll most likely be a victory party, but they will not only be covering, that mayoral race. They will also be covering New Jersey, Virginia, Prop 50 in California, and a number of other races that are a little bit more minor but matter. And I think for Democrats right now, they are desperate to get their mojo back, right? I mean, they abysmal polling, stink of Biden on them still, and the loss in 2024. I think they just need a really good night, and they need like a straight of wins from New Jersey to Virginia. Obviously, in New York, they're not going to have to worry about that. And it looks like in California, Prop 50, it looks like they're on their way. Spanberger too, Abigail Spanberger, a blue dog Democrat in Virginia, looks like she'll win. It's pretty clear. But Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey, not so much. It's interesting because I'm actually from that district that she's from, which is a longtime Republican district in New Jersey. And I don't know, Jersey is weird. Like, you have to remember, like, white ethnics in Jersey were one of the first groups, Italian Americans particularly, to come out for Trump. Trump gets huge crowds in Jersey. Atlantic City, Black African Americans came out for him. Hispanics, they're the town that I went to high school in, the county I went to high school in, Passaic County. They have a huge Hispanic community, and Republicans have all eyes on that because Trump was able to win over a number of Hispanic voters. Now, question is immigration, and his policies, his aggressive ICE policies, going to have an impact on that? Are they even going to go out and vote at all? But it seems like everyone's a little nervous about Mikey Sherrill because she's only up by a few points, like 4 points, I think. So still within the margin of error.
Yes. I mean, my assumption is she'll win. I think with the early voting numbers, they've been pretty good for the Democrats. So it would surprise me if she lost. But she's clearly not the best candidate. She's not really exciting voters all that much. It seems like she seems a bit milquetoast. But I'm curious about also New Jersey, the Latino vote, because Trump last year flipped so many Latinos in New Jersey. I mean, obviously across America, but I mean, I think it's Hudson County. I mean, some of these counties really went quite red. Will that hold? I do think this election is very interesting because there's a lot of talk last year about realignment. My sense of Latino voters generally is they're really more of a swing vote than one that's going to realign one way or the other. So I think with this race, can Sherrill claw back some of that vote? Will Trump's ICE basically turn Latinos back to the Democratic Party? I mean, there's a whole alternate universe where Trump looks at the Hispanic realignment of last year and goes, we can toughen the border because clearly that's what they want, but we're not going to be overly antagonistic towards this kind of newer ethnic group into the Republican Party. We're not going to literally send ICE agents to terrorize their neighbors. And you see ICE agents picking up citizens as well. It's not just, and obviously in most cases, people are not committing crimes. So, that's a political choice. So we'll see, will Trump be punished, the Republican Party? But, in some ways, everything comes down to referendum on Trump. Will New Jersey be that? I think that's going to be very interesting. My sense is either way, Sherrill will win. I think Virginia also goes to the Democrats, and Prop 50 is going to pass. I'm asking this will be a bit like 2017, similar. You had a very good night for Democrats that year. You kind of saw the beginnings of a blue wave. Obviously, they took the House the next year, did not take the Senate. So I'm guessing it's going to head in that direction again. I would be surprised if Democrats really took it on the chin tonight. Like, I think more likely is they have a very good night. Now, you never want to overread things, as you learned in 2022.
Right.
The whole Democratic midterm, I mean, that convinced Joe Biden to run again, which was an awful decision. One I did call out at the time. A very, very lonely thing to do.
Same here. I was also a lonely bird out there.
I don't know. Did you get when I remember I wrote a column in 2022 about how Biden for New York Mag, how Biden should quit while he's ahead. He has accomplishments. It's time to back down and have a primary. And I got like very visceral. I remember.
Oh yeah, no, same. When I was at Puck, I wrote about it, and people were like furious. They were so mad. Yeah, totally.
It shocked me. I had a similar experience when in September of 2024, I'd sort of stopped being bullish on Harris. I was for I never thought very highly of her, but
I was never bullish. I always thought there should have been a primary, like literally recorded it before they agreed to nominate her.
I thought they should have had a primary. I mean more like in August of 24. I'm like, okay, maybe she should win. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she's not going. Then in September, I'm like, probably not. And I wrote a piece in Substack about how she was dodging the media and this was bad and she should actually go out and talk to reporters.
So I wrote the same thing for Puck.
It was crazy. She went like a month and did one cable TV hit. I mean, it was nuts. And I got the reactions I got to that Substack still to this day were some of the most furious I've gotten for anything. I've written some, other sort of more contrarian pieces. That one to this day, the blue sort of blue people, Democrat, furious Democrats. But I think they feel burned now. I do think now you had a lot of those people, right, who are very furious at people like us saying Biden should run again, Harris is a bad candidate. And now they're like, yeah, I mean, we did get screwed over by these people. And now they're mad at Schumer and Jeffries. I do think there is real. I see it just anecdotally, just talking to very middle of the road Democrats who typically would just say, yeah, of course. I mean, Chuck Schumer, we know him, he's great, and they don't feel that way. I mean, they are done with him. I do think AOC will run in 28 for the Senate. That's my guess. That's my strong guess. I think if Schumer is smart, he'll retire. I think if he's got his political acumen left and he wants to go out on top and have
they never retire though, Ross.
Then he's gonna. I think he'll lose. Honestly, I think if there's a 28 primary, it's not going to be just AOC too. I mean, I think a lot of ambitious for the. You've never in New York. It's crazy. I mean, New York State, 1998 was the last time we had a Senate primary on the Democratic side, a real one. So
Gillibrand was picked. And
and she's another one. I mean, it's amazing. Walk to another term in 2024. I think there's a lot of Democrats who are like, why didn't no one run against her?
Well, I think Zohran Mamdani is going to absolutely encourage these people to look in the mirror and say, okay, I may not be a white person that, is a background in politics or, has been spending time with the DNC or the DSA or whatever, but I think I can try this. So
I think so. I think Gillibrand's very lucky she's in till 2030. But I think in 2030, to a while from now, she'll get a challenge. And I think Schumer, I feel very confident, honestly, as Zoran winning, that in 28, Schumer, if he does not retire, gets a primary. And I think it could be AOC on Schumer. It could be a multi-candidate field. I think a lot of ambitious Dems are going to look at that race and think, I can raise money, I can get people excited. I mean, someone like Tish James, I'm kind of surprised there's not more chatter around her jumping over to the Senate in 28. I mean, she'll be older by then, but she's got a lot of energy. The Democratic base likes her. Someone like that, it wouldn't shock me if she put it together. She could push Schumer out. And Jeffries is the other one where I don't think Jeffries. I think it's very hard to beat Jeffries in a primary. But it's not impossible. I was talking to some political operatives in New York, and they're like, look at Jeffrey's district now. It's got a real kind of Zoran young person, you'd say like gentrifier belt, whatever you want to call it. It sits in his district. He also has a lot of homeowners and kind of more moderate black and white voters, but it's the kind of district where you've got to be mindful. And I think for him, he gave his tepid Zoran endorsement, which is more than Schumer could do. But, you know, will he get primary next year? I don't know. My guess is probably not. But it's also he's a guy where he needs to look over his shoulder, and there's not going to be.
No, there are people already getting ready. You know that.
Yes. Ciose is the one everyone.
Well, because I think he didn't have to fight for it with Pelosi, but I you know, giving him that role. But I do want to get back to this race tonight, the New York City mayoral race. And let's just talk about how we got here with these three candidates.
Such a strange race. Yeah.
I know. It's just so weird. Mamdani pulling at 0 at one point.
Yeah.
And
over a year ago, he was literally, I went to his launch event. You know, I'd spoken to him about the race beforehand. And basically the feeling was, you know, he was confident. I thought he could do well, but I think neither of us a year ago would talk about like victory. It'd be like, there's a lane here, right? There's a lane for sort of progressives and people like dissatisfied with the status quo. And there's something you can latch on to. Now, the big question, which he answered, but at the time, I would not have felt confident. If you found me a year ago, I would not have said Zoran Mamdani is going to win the primary by 13 points. No way. Would never have said that. I would have said he can be competitive, watch for him, but I don't know who's going to win that primary. I was never that bullish in Cuomo. When Cuomo was the polling leader for many months, I remember when he got in, I was writing things like he's not inevitable. Now, I also, this kind of happened with Harris.
I love that you're a contrarian, Ross. We share that contrarian spirit, but I think that's part of being a clear-eyed journalist. Don't go with the way, the trends and the weather vane.
I'll say like in May, I was very, by like late May, I'm like, okay, Cuomo's been ahead for this long. Maybe maybe my gut isn't right. Maybe he's just going to like push through. And I think what you saw, basically we saw with Cuomo, I mean, two things happened in the primary, and we'll talk to the general. Two things happened in this primary. Zoran Mamdani ran a fantastic campaign and was a once-in-a-generation of political talent. Even his detractors will say that. You know, this is someone, you know, he has what Obama had, what AOC has to an extent. You know,
there's a weird name. Like, who would have ever thought a guy named Zoran Mamdani captivating people's imaginations?
And he's got a, you know, he comes from privilege, but he also has a great New York story. Yes, like he grew up wealthy. You can't argue that. But he's also an immigrant kid, went to public high school. You know, he's clearly of the city. Something that Cuomo has gotten entirely wrong about him, especially in these last few weeks as the race has gotten nasty, is they're trying to make Zoran out to be like this other, like Cuomo said he doesn't have like New York values and understand like 9/11, like really some really wacky stuff. And it's like New York characters Zoran Mamdani. I grew up around Zoran Mamdani's, you know, kids who spoke multiple languages, born elsewhere, didn't become citizens until they were older. So very common. But anyway, you know, Cuomo, so Zoran ran a great campaign, right? The primary, impeccable. But
amazing social media. It was like
TikTok,
made for the moment.
Absolutely. Just subverted the entire system through like just great use of social media, great message, the affordability, authenticity, all that was true. Also, what helped him, you can't argue this, is he had a horrible front runner. Horrible, not even in terms of like the policy, but just like politically. Like Cuomo ran what I found to be the very worst front running campaign I've ever witnessed. It makes Hillary Clinton
such a strong sense of entitlement. I'm sorry, but that is the only word that I can feel when I think of his name.
If I were Andrew Cuomo in the situation he was in, he announced in March of this March, after he was rumored for like 6 months, right? I'd be like, all right, listen, I know I, you know, disappointed people while
killed grandma, touched a lot of women.
I think you have to do at least like and it's very hard for him to apologize. He never does it, but I think you have to do some sort of reckoning with your past and show right to a degree. And then you have to go on a listening tour and talk to a lot of voters and get in the streets and do campaigning.
He's not winning Republicans in the way that Trump was winning Republicans and could say, I have no apology. You're dealing with Democrats in New York City. You have to acknowledge the sexual harassment complaints. You can't just be like, my daughters tell me it's weird and I don't understand it and they're being too tough on me. He didn't get it. Yeah, and he didn't run. Like you said, it was a Rose Garden campaign. He doesn't like retail politics.
No, he hates retail politics. And what was not shocking, wasn't shocking, but was notable was there were all these forums during the primary. You know, every like civic group, local groups, they'll have like these candidate forums. They're not quite debates. Like the candidates will show up, they'll be together, sometimes they'll be apart. And it's what all candidates do. You go to these things, voters are there, you talk, you take questions, you leave. Cuomo would like skip all of them. Like all of it. It was like a running joke. Like it'd be, so there's Zoran, there's Adrian Adams, there's Brad Lander, no Cuomo. I mean, it was amazing. Total entitlement, no retail campaigning, barely any interviews either. I mean, I think he did a little press, not a lot, really avoided the press as much as was humanly possible. And then he got throttled. I mean, absolutely throttled, lost by 13 points. And it was a combination of Zoran's, great appeal, but also Cuomo's great failure. These things went together. And he's someone, even when he was coming back, months ago, he was such a known quantity. He was governor for over a decade. It's very hard to reinvent yourself. It's very hard to push your high negatives down, especially when you make no effort to do it, and he made none. So he was a guy, he had the arrogance, the entitlement. Look what I built. Look what a great governor I was. He'd go out and talk and just like list accomplishments as if people really care that you remodeled LaGuardia Airport. It's like, nice, but what do you want? Why do you want to be mayor? And that's another thing he couldn't answer at any point. Why do you want to be mayor of New York City? What do you want to do? In some ways, reminded me.
The obituary doesn't say disgraced governor of New York.
That's the real answer. Like,
because I live in White Plains and I'm living in my daughter's apartment.
And no feel for the city, and just a real disdain for the city. I mean, that's something that came across. New Yorkers want a mayor. I think the mayors that do well in New York, generally speaking, are those who seem to like love the job. I think de Blasio stood for this. I think de Blasio had accomplishments as mayor. I'm a de Blasio apologist, but I'll say he made a ton of mistakes. And you never got the sense he relished the role. He always seemed a bit put off by the whole thing. And he wanted to go travel. He wanted to do the national stuff. And I went to
Paris with him once. Why the F was I going to Paris as a city hall reporter with the mayor?
The funniest one was he went to Iowa in 2016 to door knock for Hillary Clinton. And this was like the weirdest. He's the mayor of New York City on a door in Iowa. Like, why? What are you doing?
Well, because he ran. I think
yes, and of course it didn't work out. I think one of the great answers Zoran gave in the primary debate when he got the Israel-Palestine, talked about that forever, and Zoran being pro-Palestine and Israel skeptical to say the least. In the debate, they asked one of the moderators, like, when do you plan to visit Israel? Like, this is what they do in debates. They ask you, are you going to visit Israel? And Zoran says, well, I'm not going anywhere. I'm the mayor of New York City. I'm not going to take any travel. I'm staying here. And I think that answer,
unlike Bloomberg, who would go to Bermuda on the weekend,
every other basically
during like snowstorms.
Yes, he'd get out. And I think New Yorkers want someone who's going to be in the muck with them and really loves the job. And it was very clear that even if you dislike Zoran, you saw someone with great enthusiasm for New York City, for campaigning, for being in the mix. Like, he's obviously a guy, you feel it. Like, he wants to be in the streets and he wants to do the job. Like he has the energy, he's ready to do it. You might say he'll do a bad job. You might hate his policies, but it's clear he likes it. I think in the way how Trump loves politics. Like, Trump wants to be president. He wants to be in the mix. Like, he kind of relishes.
He loves the performative part of politics for sure.
He does.
He loves the performative part of being president. He likes to have the cameras on. He likes to show the handshake and the talks and the diplomacy. Totally. Yes, so I do want to talk though about like what he is promising Mamdani and what kind of challenges can he face within City Hall.
So we'll break down kind of his major promises, right? It's free buses, it's universal childcare, it's the rent freeze and rent stabilized apartments, city run grocery stores. Those are kind of like the big four. And there's other ones too, on
raise
policing.
taxes on the wealthy, but he can't really do that, right?
Raise corporate taxes and high income earners. Yes. So can those be achieved? The answer is maybe. With some much more achievable than others. He can eventually freeze the rent stabilized apartments. The mayor appoints the rent guidelines board. Eric Adams might stack it with his own appointees before he leaves, but even then, those terms expire eventually. So if Zoran has to wait till year 3, he waits till year 3. I mean, that's just how it is. Eventually, he'll get the chance. He'll get it. It'll happen. Universal childcare is very popular. Kathy Hochul supports it. The state legislature supports it. She's entering her reelection next year. Getting some form of childcare expansion in New York City is going to be like a political winner. It's very expensive. The program Zoran is calling for, it'd be 5 months to 5 years, $6 billion a year. It's a lot of money. Now, could you do half of it? Could you could you gradually expand it out? You know, we have UPK, Universal Pre-K in New York City. De Blasio is pushing into 3K.
We already have 3K, right? Don't we already have 3K?
We kind of, de Blasio was rolling it out. Then Adams kind of started to scuttle it. I think it's a good question. I don't have children, so I would know more if I had children, but I believe there's like a form of 3K, but Adams was, and I would argue, not a good mayor, and he was really mismanaging UPK and 3K. So I don't actually know the state of 3K. So there are those first few years where parents are paying a lot of money. If you're not getting Head Start, you're paying tons of money for childcare, and that includes New Yorkers. So I think childcare is doable for him. I think it's going to take money from the state. Yes, you want a tax increase to pay for it, but if you don't get a tax increase, UPK was funded with state money, city money as well. You can get creative with budgets. It's not a crazy thing to do. Every year, the mayor and the governor negotiate. It's a big budget.
And also, Kathy may need his help with progressive voters if she's running for re-election, right?
And I think that's her calculus, and at least Stefanik's attacking her for it. But I think Hochul's making what's probably the better of the two bets, right? Especially in a statewide election. New York City is a significant part of it. It's a huge part of the primary. But even in general, what saved her against Lee Zeldin 4 years ago, she almost lost, or 3 years ago, was it was big turnout in New York City. Like people kind of woke up at the last minute, like, oh, a MAGA Republican might be our next governor. Probably should go vote if you're a Democrat, and she got a lot of turnout out of Manhattan and Brooklyn. So I think that's where she's going. So childcare, I think,
the Senate is Democratic too, right? In Albany.
Yes, it wasn't when de Blasio, when you were there. De Blasio had to the Republican Senate. Very different.
It was kind of fun to watch, and also he and Cuomo had a horrible relationship, which was.
And also Cuomo had no interest in working with him. And the Republican Senate had no interest in working with de Blasio. Of course, now Zoran has to deal with the federal situation, a hostile Trump saying, I'm going to send ICE agents, I'm going to send National Guard, I'm going to withhold money from the federal government. That's way worse than what de Blasio dealt with. But within New York State, he's got a much easier hand to deal with. You have a friendly governor, and you have a state legislature that's also very friendly, Democrat dominated. Some Democrats don't love him up there, but overall, they're going to want to be friendly than hostile. So I think childcare is like a maybe, but it's possible because it's broadly popular. It's kind of something everyone wants. Buses actually doable too, because they're a lot less expensive. You're talking, it's about $800 million a year. They estimate for free bus program. 800 mil in a 200 billion budget is not a lot of money. Even in the state budget, you're talking $100 billion. So again, like childcare, I can see it coming in piecemeal. You start with pilot programs. You do it in like parts of different boroughs. He's not going to wave a wand and just have it all in March, right? It's going to be a process of getting to these things. So I think buses, yes, possible. Childcare, possible. We're talking
city-owned groceries.
He's proposing 5 of them. It's probably the least ambitious part of his agenda, honestly. I think that the best criticism of it I've heard is that, it's 5 stores. If you don't live near the store, it won't impact your life at all, which is true. If you live near it, it'll be cool. I think it's very possible. I mean, if the city can't run 5 grocery stores, and we should pack it up as a city, honestly. So that's the one that always provokes like a weird amount of backlash, because you get like stuff, but it's like Soviet, it's communist. It's like it's 5 stores. Like relax. We're
Is
gonna
there
be
anywhere
fine.
else in America that has city-run grocery stores?
No, that's the one Kansas City tried, didn't work out. That is the one thing I would say of all his agenda proposals. They all have antecedents elsewhere, or they have like partial antecedents. Free buses, like Boston has like a partial free bus program with Michelle Wu. But yeah, I mean, the grocery store, it's like on one hand out on a limb. On the other hand, why can't New York City lead the way in having one per borough? Like, it's not that hard. You find some property, you pick someone to manage it, you can subsidize. They're not free. They're just being subsidized by the city. So you have cheap items. It'll be like a city-run Costco. It'll be fine. Now, tax hikes, of course, are going to be a challenge. I think Hochul has said no. She's also waffled a bit. I think you've seen her softening a little bit. I think his tax hike proposals are fairly modest. Remember, Cuomo raised taxes too, basically against his will. The legislature in 2021 forced his hand. He didn't want to. So this is the one thing when I get a lot of people who question his agenda. I think a lot is fair game with Zoran, including his lack of experience, including his past comments. I think you can criticize him all you want. I think the thing that I do find, for people who don't know New York that well, they act like what is in this sort of basic, they act like what he's proposing is highfalutin and far-fetched and crazy, when in fact, all of it's in the realm of possibility. A lot of it's just about negotiation. It's really about going to Albany, and you can go to Albany. It's very doable. Mayors do it all the time. De Blasio had a very hard time because of Cuomo, but Cuomo is not there anymore. Hochul is a normal center-left Democrat. So she'll say no to things. She'll say yes to things. It's a negotiation. Maybe he gets a smaller tax hike. Maybe Hochul just says, listen, instead of a tax hike, here's some money for some of your programs. Now the challenge is there are projected budget holes next year. Now projections don't always equal reality. Like right now, there's talk of a fairly big gap at the state budget level, but budget holes do close. Wall Street had a good year so far, so the revenues are up in New York City, so that'll probably help budgetary matters. So we'll see. All these things, he's not going to get it all done right away. He might not get all of it done in 4 years. He might be mayor 8 years, assuming he wins tonight. So it's a process, and I think that's the thing people from covering New York City and New York State, that you can have proposals, then you have negotiations, and you get to a point where you can maybe claim victory, or you can begin the process of working towards your policy goal.
Yeah, I mean, what can we learn from de Blasio and defund the police? Because, Mamdani seems to be on an apology tour, which I think is fine. He went on Fox, he apologized. My producer Eric said he was a squish for doing that. I thought that was probably the best course, and maybe the right, and the right venue, because the police can basically veto your mayorship. Like, can you explain that to our listeners, like how powerful the police force is in New York City?
So de Blasio is very much undone by poor relations with his NYPD. De Blasio, in his defense, tried. I think one thing, Zoran has sort of some currents working against him and some working sort of in his favor. I say against him is that he's more radical than Bill de Blasio, and that Bill de Blasio did not campaign on defunding. Zoran's not campaigning on it. Bill de Blasio never called as a candidate to defund the police, and he brought in Bill Bratton, and he talked about police reform, but he didn't quite have the same history Zoran does with DSA. Now, Zoran has walked away from those comments, and he said he'd appoint Jessica Tisch, reappoint her. She's Eric Adams' police commissioner. She's well-liked by a lot of moderates. The police are very powerful. They have strong unions. Traditionally, the union bosses were major political figures. They aren't any longer, which helped Zoran. When we were in City Hall, Pat Lynch ran the PBA. Pat Lynch was like having Donald Trump run your PBA. Like he had the charisma of a Trump. He was incredibly inflammatory. he was also very savvy, honestly, savvier than Trump. And he foiled multiple mayors. I mean, Michael Bloomberg fought with Pat Lynch. De Blasio, I mean, really undone. Year one, de Blasio had Eric Garner. And then you had the two.
The police turned their backs on de Blasio when he would show up at events.
So they turned at the cop funerals when there were two officers. The end of 2014, two officers were killed execution style, and I believe in their cars. And de Blasio, who was really trying to speak the language of police reform, especially after stop and frisk had escalated under Bloomberg, he had become unpopular with the department. Yes, when he went to the police funerals, they turned their backs on him. And it was a very indelible image. And in some ways, he never quite recovered. It was very hard for him politically to have the police being so hostile to him all the time, and also having police union bosses being very aligned against him, and bosses who knew how to use the media very well, whether it's Pat Lynch, this guy Ed Mullins, who's since, I think, gone to prison, who's had the sergeants union. It was a difficult time for de Blasio. I think Zoran similarly is going to have to deal with a department that will be hostile to him, that will challenge him. Now, interestingly enough, because of the zeitgeist, criminal justice reform and police reform has not been a big part of this campaign at all. Remember in 2013, de Blasio ran on having a biracial family and reducing stop and frisk and just resetting the relationship between police and the African-American community. It's a big part of his campaign. Here with Zoran, it's interesting. Sort of Black Lives Matter has petered out. There isn't a talk about police brutality anymore.
He didn't run on it either, on safety.
No, didn't really run on it. He has his Department of Community Safety proposal, which actually isn't that radical. It's to send sort of mental health professionals, pair them with police to respond to mental health distress calls. These are programs that are used in other cities. New York City actually had a pilot program under de Blasio. I think Adam Scuttle did up in Harlem. So they're and police themselves don't want to respond to mental health calls. So it's actually something that's more pro-police than it looks. If you talk to police, they'll say, yeah, like I'm not a social worker. I don't want to just show up if someone's having, a schizophrenic episode. I'd like to have a professional with me who can help handle it, right? You're not just sending a social worker in by themselves. You pair them up. So I think it's a reasonable proposal. I think it's one that won't cost much more money, and it will probably be implemented. So it is interesting that with criminal justice and with public safety that it just isn't as much in the atmosphere. Crime has continued to decline. New York is posting very low violent crime numbers. That's also true in a lot of American cities now. You've really seen the pandemic crime spike start to fall off quite a bit. So that helps Zoran. That works to his favor. 4 years ago, crime was rising. Eric Adams won on a law and order platform. And that type of campaign, Zoran might have had a harder time. Here, public safety is not the top issue. It is affordability. So it's been better.
I want to ask you about the divide within the Democratic Party between progressives and centrists. And I think we're going to have to, at some point, get into the Israel of it all.
Yes, that's a big part of it. So, the divide is long simmering, right? You can take it back to 2016, Bernie versus Hillary. In some ways, the modern rift begins there. AOC taking out Joe Crowley. There've just been ongoing tension that sort of I went into receded slightly when Biden was president, because you had a Democratic president and Biden was willing to work with progressives. It felt like some of those disagreements were put on the back burner, especially with people like AOC and Bernie backing Biden. If you remember when a lot were calling for Biden to drop out,
he did put Lena Khan in the White House, had a very progressive policy with the Build Back Better, and he ended up being a very progressive president.
Yes, he was, and I think that was why, in some ways, you saw a bit of a detente between the moderate and the progressive wing. Those debates, took a back seat. Now, since Harris has lost, it kind of it reminds me a bit of in 2016 when Hillary lost. All those tensions come back to the surface. Trump is president again, so a lot of the divides are back. You have like new debates, like the abundance movement, which is sort of on the moderate end of things, but has some progressive support. You've got like the popularists and kind of those who say we have to run, more anti-abortion candidates in red states. And you have those types of fights. And I think also, Israel-Palestine is the big one now. I do liken it somewhat to the Vietnam War in the 1960s. It's not quite as dominant since Americans aren't going to fight. But if you look at like the divide in the Democratic Party over Vietnam, you're seeing something similar with Israel-Palestine, where it's very generational. As Vietnam was, Israel-Palestine really breaks down. If you talk to voters under 40, they are deeply hostile to Israel and much more supportive of Palestinian rights.
Which has shifted, by the way, since he even launched this campaign. And I think that the figures now are 80% are pro-Palestine at this point among Democrats. But he took a risk early on because it was divided, I would say, right? It was like 50-50.
These politics, Zoran's politics, being pro-BDS, saying you'll arrest Netanyahu, saying that you think there's apartheid in the West Bank, saying Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. These are politics when we were covering politics at City Hall a decade ago. Unheard of.
Why would the mayor weigh in on this? It was like absurd.
They would, but they'd just be pro-Israel. De Blasio is very pro-Israel.
Right.
Now, I remember that in 2014, it was not as severe, but there was like an Israel-Gaza war. They're shooting rockets at each other. And I remember there were these like rallies. I went and covered them where all the Democratic elected officials would just line up for Israel. There was no counterweight. There was no such thing in the 2010s. No such thing really as a elected official, certainly a Democrat. We've got the Republicans, but no Democrat who was pro-Palestine, who would say, I think what's happening in the West Bank is bad. Didn't exist. And even progressives like de Blasio were very pro-Israel. That shift began to happen.
That's why he went to Paris. Actually, there was an attack in a Jewish neighborhood in Paris.
And de Blasio.
That's why I went with him. Now that I'm flashing back to it all,
every mayor has traveled to Israel. De Blasio did Israel. Obviously, Adams has done Israel. Cuomo did his Israel trip. They all do it, right? So that was politics till the 2020s, and certainly it was burbling up before October 7th. I think the undercurrents were there, but October 7th changed things dramatically. You had the Hamas attacks, which were brutal, and you had Israel's response, which I think even I'd say that the sane defenders of Israel would say are disproportionate, or they would say Netanyahu's response was not the most strategic, right? If you actually want to get the hostages back, why are you waging like a multi-year kind of like total warfare invasion of Gaza and killing almost 70,000 people, many of them? The number of children dead is striking. You're talking about close to 20,000. It's a number that is hard to fathom. The kids that are dead, and you cannot say these are Hamas combatants, these are children. So that is hard to defend. And you take already this sort of untenable position of Israel being a country that is a democracy, but is also an ethno-state. I'm Jewish, so I understand the appeal of Israel. I get it very much. My father lived on kibbutz. I know the world well. But it is there's a contradiction about Israel. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but ethno-state versus democracy. Anyway, the bigger point is it got harder and harder if you were a progressive Democrat to be pro-Israel. It just makes less sense when the country is governed by the right wing. It kind of comes down to that. Who's in power in Israel? It's right-wing political parties that Netanyahu must placate.
Trump's advisors helping Netanyahu win re-election.
It's a conservative, politically conservative country. The labor left in Israel is dead. So if you're a Democrat or a liberal person, there's less to like about Israel. And after October 7th and after the war, it just became more untenable. And I think a lot of taboos were lifted. I do think there were a lot of younger voters who looked at the situation and said, this is all quite bad. You had certainly, yes, you can, people blame TikTok for things. TikTok matters, but TikTok matters only in the sense that it was bringing images to light that were real images. It wasn't AI imagery.
The Israeli government says it's all propaganda.
Each side's got its propaganda. I'm not saying Hamas.
No, yeah, they do. They're influencing right-wing influencers. You saw that Netanyahu meeting with them. I do think,
the here, and it's not. I'd say that the short answer is this divide is not going away, and it's going to be very generational. I do think for the pro-Israel Democrats, they have to worry a lot because I think they've lost people under 40, and I don't think they're getting them back. I'd say that's my ultimate takeaway from all this.
Okay, I do want to play one clip that just came out from Andy Ogles, who is a House Freedom Caucus member, and he's sharing an ad centered around 9/11 and Islamophobia, because obviously this has been, actually, I'm told by my producer we shouldn't play it. Never mind, we are not going to play it, but you guys can check it out for yourself. It's just the two twin towers being hit, but I have heard that there are ads that target Mamdani and tie him to 9/11.
Yes, very much so. And they've used the workaround that he's friendly with Hassan Piker. He's been on a show back in 2019. Piker said America deserved 9/11. Now, I actually went back and watched the clip and read about this. And he's clearly joking, and he did apologize. It's not a good joke, but he's a Twitch streamer. People talk crap on Twitch, and he did apologize in 2019. So bad joke. Zoran, you could argue Zoran should have condemned Hassan Piker, maybe not been friends with him. But other than that, there's nothing to tie Zoran to any of this. But yes, there have been ads repeatedly running where you see the Twin Towers. There's one where jihad appears on Zoran's face. There has been a real, I would say, Islamophobic current running through this mayoral race in these final weeks. You saw less of it in the primary. I do think Cuomo, seeing that his attacks in the primary failed, has now made it more personal and started talking about Zoran being from Uganda, using his full on Kwame Mamdani in the way Barack Hussein Obama became a dog whistle back in the 2000s. Yeah. And you see it. I mean, I think the good news, I would say, for those who dislike Islamophobia is I don't think it'll be successful. I think New York is not a very Islamophobic place anymore. I think people are much more accepting of Muslims and of other religions broadly. And I think the attacks are falling flat. But yes, I mean, there has been, I think part of the visceral reaction to Mamdani, some of it because he's a socialist.
It's also been distant since 9/11. There's been, how many years? It's been 30 years now? 20 years?
24 years, yeah.
24 years.
It's a long time. And I also just think, I do think some of the reaction to him as a candidate is because of his faith. There are people, I was on a debate stage the other night, with Unheard. It was a debate over, should you be afraid of Zoran, yes or no? My side said no. The conservative side said yes. And the National Review writer who was on the panel, she said it sort of midway through the debate. I just don't think this guy likes Western civilization. And that's where, to me, that is blatantly Islamophobic, because he's a state assemblyman running for mayor of New York City. He's a very secular person. He clearly enjoys and is proud of where he lives. So to say you have disdain for Western civilization, now they wouldn't say that if I think I was running for mayor, even if I had the same views as Zoran, they wouldn't say, oh, Ross hates Western civilization. I do think because he is brown skinned and he is Muslim, I do think that is a part of all this. And I don't think it'll work, but it's a part of this.
Guys, I want to thank everyone who submitted questions. I'm sorry I couldn't get through all of them. I'm assuming that Ross is running out of time because we both have to get to the election night party. I will be reporting for the AP, their live stream. Go to the Associated Press. You can watch it. You'll get all the optics from inside. The Brooklyn, what is it again? It's the
Paramount.
Yeah, the Paramount, the Brooklyn Paramount. And there'll be coverage of all of the results at the AP. And of course, always follow Ross. He is so plugged in, such a sharp reporter, has been ahead of this story. And please follow him on Substack if you're watching that way. I don't know if you're on YouTube, but this is how you can support
YouTube, including your channel. But no, I don't have a YouTube channel.
Okay. Well, if you're watching this on Substack, subscribe to the Substack. We appreciate your help keeping us independent journalists, reporting freely. So yeah, thanks so much, guys.
Thank you for having me. It was great.
Okay, bye.